Right. Well, uh, okay. So we are recording.
Okay.
So, Camille, thank you so much for taking time. You're a busy lady. You've got a church. You've got a family. You've got. You're probably not having chaplain duties right now, I imagine, with
No,
the Sparks.
no, I'm with the Sparks, and I sure hate it that I'm not able to have chaplain duties.
Yes.
Aside from just kind of checking up on the girls, make sure all is well.
Yeah. Okay. Well, glad you get to do that. Hopefully, some of the, hopefully there'll be games and stuff that you get to enjoy here too. But uh, well, let me. I'll say this for you and for our church too as they listen in. So for me, I've found that, especially over the last 4 or 5 years, as I've been more intentionally trying to grow in this. Like I read a lot of books and all that, but the things that have been most impactful for me, and I think overall most helpful for me in my growth in terms of just racial righteousness has been just listening to friends. And so I'm always super grateful when a friend who's not white is willing to talk to me. And, I've got a handful of friends who I can just ask dumb questions and friends who are just really generous with me. And Camille, you've been one of those people in my life for actually a very long time that I've been listening to. I'll segue into an introduction here. So Pastor Camille Wooden, she is a pastor in Pasadena. She's also a WNDA chaplain. She does that too, which is super fun. And we actually, I don't know if you even remember this, Camille, but we actually first met in an assessment.
Yeah.
Way back when.
Yes.
Way back. So Camille and I and our spouses, we went through church planner assessment in the same assessment class.
Actually,
Probably
I was
close to
engaged at
20
that
years.
time. I was engaged at that time.
Yeah, I remember. That's right. You guys weren't married yet. That's right. Oh, that's so fun. Yeah, that's right. And we'd only been married a couple of years too. We were pretty new at this whole thing, but yeah, that's been some time now because that was a year or two before we planted. And you and I also planted the same year. We planted in 2003.
Right. Yes. Yes.
So that means that I've known you for at least 17 years. So
yeah. Yeah.
And so we're pastors in the same region in the covenant. So we've had a lot of contact through the years through that. And then I always invite Camille to come and speak in classes that I teach at Fuller. Whenever I can get you out there, I'm really happy to have you in front of classes. So anyway, that's who you are. That's kind of who we are, our relationship. And I have been in the practice since, really since we met, of just listening whenever you talk. I just have a lot of respect for you.
Thank you.
You're just a very wise woman and a terrific preacher. Some of our folks will remember that you came and preached at our church once too, a couple of years back. But anyway, all that to say, thank you very much for taking the time to have this conversation with me and allow our church to listen in.
Sure. Anytime. I want to thank you for asking me. I'm trying to make sure my lighting is okay. Y'all see me okay? Do I need to turn this light off? Am I all right?
I think you're good.
I'm good? Okay.
Yep.
I'm new to this camera stuff, so.
We are all on a serious learning curve these days, aren't we? So, well, I guess for me, Camille, in the midst of all the tragedy that's part of this moment, there's also a real sense that I feel of opportunity. I feel like people are listening and leaning in a way that's just important and really caring. And I would love it if you could just kind of talk to us about just your experience in the church and in America of kind of, I mean, what it is to live in black skin.
Okay. Um, it's interesting. I'm trying to. I was raised in a predominantly Caucasian neighborhood up until I was about 11, 12. And so I was trying to remember the first time, any kind of racial stuff has happened. I'm just trying to think back. I can think of some early memories. But I remember in particular, although I was raised in a predominantly Caucasian house, I mean, a Caucasian community, my church was all black, and all of my family was black. So going to family gatherings or church gatherings was all black. And I remember the first. Hold on.
Hey, Mom, can we share this pizza if that's okay?
Yes. Sorry about that. That's what happens. Right?
Oh no, that's going to happen to me any minute too. So it's all good.
Yes. I remember when I was about 9, I think, my mother and my father sat us down, me and my brother, and had us watch Roots. And so every night we would watch Roots. And for those of y'all who've never seen Roots, it's about slavery in America. And it catalogs us a life of a slave and the family and what they went through. And so we sat there and watched it. And I just remember being impacted by that, and how it just gave me a visual of just, I guess the difference of me in America. And so growing up African American, there are a lot of things that you just come to know. I mean, that that things are different for you. And you just know it. You just know it. When I was in, for example, I remember being in high school, and I was bused from a predominantly, when I moved from the predominantly Caucasian neighborhood, I moved to a predominantly African American neighborhood. Well, at that time, they were trying to integrate the schools, make sure that everybody had an equal opportunity. So they were busing a lot of the kids, a lot of African American kids, to the white schools. And so that's a part of our history. A lot of kids were, you would say, bused, and you catch a bus from your community and you go to the white community and go to the white schools. And I remember very clearly that this school was predominantly, and this is like in the 80s, so they are predominantly white. They're used to being white. At that time, the choir, it was well known. I mean, there's things that are well known. The choir, everyone knew that the choir was pretty much all white. If you were African American, that's not where you go. You just knew certain places, I grew up in Texas, so there were certain places you knew not to go. There were, I was a cheerleader, and there were only a certain slots. There was, you wanted to make sure it was, multicultural, but there were only certain slots for African Americans. So you have, okay, we've got our 3, so that's enough. So even if your skill is different, it could be better than some of the other cheerleaders, but we've got 3. I mean, everyone knew. We just knew that you knew. Okay, I can't make it this year because I got the 3. Wait till one of the African Americans are gone, so then I can be in the African American slot. So and then you might get the comments. I think I got one of my cheerleader comments. She said, me and one of my friends, we were sitting there talking, and she said to me, we're having watermelon and something. And so we were like, okay, fine. And this is our sponsor, by the way. And she said, oh, I thought all of you all like watermelon. We was like, no, we do not. I remember, and you on up to in college, I remember there was a fraternity in our college, and we had, again, in Texas, it's very clear. When I was growing up, it was very clear on what whites did and what blacks did. And even when I went to the University of Texas, so even the University of Texas, the whites did this and the blacks did that. And it's just the way it is. I mean, I'm sure it's still the same way, but it might be different now. But it was just the way it is. This is what you did, and this is what you didn't do. And so, so when I went there, I remember that there was a fraternity, and we would have these parades, sororities and fraternities to have these parades. Now, mind you, back then, again, the white sororities and fraternities all had houses. The black sororities and fraternities did not have houses, and they would have these parades, and all the white sororities and fraternities would be in these parades. The black sororities and fraternities would not be in the parades. We'd have our own thing. We'd have our Greek shows. So during this parade, one of the white fraternities had they put on their show, excuse me, but they use the N-word, in go home, in their floats. It was one of their floats. When you lift the hood of their car.
Like actually posted on their float?
Yeah.
It's like that blatant?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
In go home. And then they had printed, and their fraternity people were wearing these. It was a Michael Jordan body with a Sambo face. So if you don't know what Sambo is, it's kind of a caricature of it's making fun of African Americans. And so they put that face on Michael Jordan's body, and they were wearing the t-shirt. So, the university, so we was marching, and we marched to the fraternity house. Of course, all the fraternity houses, all the white fraternity and sorority houses are all these big houses. And, the one fraternity that got a house in the fraternity row, they said that the market, the housing value went down when they bought the house. So anyway, so the president at that time said, let's have racial reconciliation talks. And they wanted the fraternities, the white fraternities and the black fraternities, to kind of come together. So the white fraternity, one of the white sororities rather, invited my sorority over for dinner. So we go over there for dinner, and so again, they have these big old white houses and stuff with columns, and so we're in there, and we're eating, and we don't know each other, but we're still trying to eat. So they have an African American woman who's cooking in the kitchen, and so she's making fried chicken, and so we're trying to eat fried chicken with a fork and a knife, right? And so they invited this lady to come and speak, and she was very good, and she's a local racial reconciliation person that spoke, and she was very good. So she talked about stereotypes, and she said it's a stereotype that African Americans like chicken. And served us chicken. So on the way out, they profusely apologized. They were like, "Oh, we're so sorry, we served you chicken." Like, it's okay. We actually we do like chicken, but I think that
we all like fried chicken.
Right.
All God's children like fried chicken.
What got us the most, though, is that it's just the fact that all of the sororities and fraternities, they all have houses. And none of the black sororities and fraternities had houses. Like I said, except for the one that at the end of me being there had a house. So that was just different. Right. Well, I just say that it's just, you are very aware of the difference, that I don't know if people who are white aren't as aware of the differences that you have as an African American or as maybe a minority, period, in the world. And I mean, those are just a couple of incidents. I can think of a lot more, but just different things. I mean, I was thinking just the other day, me and my husband were watching TV, and we were watching a Hallmark show, and they had African American couple on there, and we were like, and the person who was acting, she's well known. We're like, why didn't she tell these people about her makeup? Now, this is an African American thing. See, African Americans know when, I hate to say it, but Hollywood is not using makeup that's for African Americans. This goes way back to, I remember being in high school, and my friend was on drill team, and they all had to wear the same pantyhose. Well, these nice neutral pantyhose look really good with white skin, but in black skin, it is like it's like this. And so you have your face like this, and your hands like this, and your legs are looking like this. because the pantyhose that are for everybody do not look good on you. So we're
Right,
looking at
for everybody. Mhm.
yeah, we're looking at
Mhm.
this movie, and I'm like, how come they don't get people who can do black makeup to understand that foundation doesn't look good on her? We were just wondering. That's different. Or anytime we go
Mhm.
to any hotel I go to, they usually usually all of the shampoo and the conditioners is never for my hair. Never, they'll never have my products for my shampoo. It was also, though, usually African Americans, we don't wash our hair as much as Caucasians do. Just to let y'all know, I don't know if y'all know that we don't wash up. Black folk don't wash their hair like that because we got to keep the oils in. So the
Okay.
oil's in. So I wash my hair like, once, 2 weeks, because you gotta, that's another thing. I won't go there, but that's another thing. Whenever I
Okay.
talk to my friends who are Caucasians, we always, we swap secrets. And that's one of the things that always, when I'm talking to my friends, that we talk about hair. But I mean, but it's still, if I go to the hotel, I'm like, none of this shampoo and conditioner, is for me. It's just not. But
Mhm.
the Band-Aids, were made for, if you look at the flesh tone skin tone, it's not this tone flesh tone skin tone. I mean,
Right.
I could
Right.
go on and on about different things that just, as African American, those are little stuff. I mean, those are little bitty things, but it's continually, it continues to say that you're just different. And that's just the way it is. I mean, and you understand that. And there are other instances I can think of, from Fuller on up, that will, to now, covenant. I mean, a lot of things that will come up that will, just remind you that you're different. And I think that's kind of one of the things that, as an African American, you just are constantly reminded that you're different. But it doesn't mean you're less than, or you're better than. It just means that you're different. But you have to come in your own self-esteem to know that, I am of value in the Lord of who I am, whether or not this person says I am, or this person, doesn't. And so you have to know that. I mean, the issue surrounding what we're dealing with now with George Floyd, and his death with African Americans. I mean, that's, you hate to say it, but this has been happening. I mean, this has been happening. I was asked a question. This is before everything went down with George Floyd, and even Breonna Taylor, and even Ahmaud Arbery. I was doing had a talk with a guy, and he was talking to me about, he was doing an interview, and we were talking about, how do you prep your congregation, or what do you say to your congregation when these things happen? And I said, honestly, we might pray, but because it happens a lot. If I were to do like some special thing, I would be doing a special thing every Sunday. because it happened. I mean, it happens when you see, that kind of thing. It happens in our communities. So, I mean, I took a class in college, and it was called History from the Bottom Up, and it was taught by an African American professor. And it was actually African American history, but he could not call it that because he needed it to be. He needed to be required for everybody, and you couldn't just say African American history because it won't be required for everybody. But if you say African American history from the bottom up, and then you kind of put it, you can kind of. So to be in that class was extremely eye-opening, even for me as an African American. And to be in there, like I said, it's about 300 people in the class, and it's about maybe 3 blacks, maybe 2 blacks in the class, probably like 3 blacks, maybe 5, 3 or 5 blacks. It wasn't a lot of us. But I remember He would talk about African American history. He passed around pictures of lynchings, and he passed around this. I remember this one picture of it was a postcard that they would send to different people. It's postcard, and it was them sent next to a man that they had burned up, but a black man, his torso, just his upper body, and his latter half of his body was burned up. And it was about 5 white guys that were surrounding him, smiling and taking a picture. And it was a postcard.
Wow.
That they were sending around, and he was talking about the lynchings. And I kid you not, I was in the class and I was like, oh my God. I was like shocked. But then I'm like, now I know this happens and I'm shocked. But then I'm looking around like everybody around who is Caucasian. I'm like, did y'all know that this stuff happens? And I'm like, how shocked is it for you? I don't know. I knew, and I'm still shocked. And it's different.
And were they shocked? Were they okay?
Very much so. Very much so.
Yeah.
But it needed to be said, when he passed around, there was a famous photograph of taken up, and I don't know if it's I don't know where, if it's at a rally. I'm not sure what it's at, but it's a picture of 3 African American men hanging from a tree. And I say it's famous in terms of this is the face, and in Black history, it's like we don't want to repeat, so we must see. You must see these Black men from these trees. And there's a poem, I think it's called Strange Fruit, and it's talking about the lynchings, what's coming from these trees, these African American men that are being lynched, that are being hung from these trees. And so those pictures are just like, wow, just on. And the picture might be called Strange Fruit. I'm not sure or not, I cannot remember. I just know that that's a picture that goes around. But like I said, that kind of thing that it continues. It has happened in our community. I mean, it does. And so.
Well, and Camille, can I ask you about that? Because I know, like sometimes you'll hear people say, they'll see that and they'll be appalled. But sometimes people will say things like, well, that was then. Thank God that's not happening now. What does that have to do with us now? Like, how do you respond to that kind of thing when you hear it?
Well, I say that it's happening now. It's just different. It's different. It's not, I'll say it 2 ways. I'll say one, lynching does not happen. I can't even say lynching does not happen, because if you Google lynchings, you might find out that there are some lynchings still happening. I just remember a guy, and I can't remember, it was not too long ago, that got a Black man that got dragged from his car. He got dragged. They tied him to a car. This is in Texas. They tied him to a car and drugged him. And that wasn't too long ago. And I bet you if you see, I would say it's still happening. But I would also tell people, like, if you say that it's not happening now, how do I want to say it? There is a disregard, I think, for oftentimes for the African American story, or even sometimes the African American life, which is why you have Black Lives Matter. That even when you say, "Oh, that's not happening now," it's kind of like it's not really important, in other words, or it's not. But it is. It is, because what's happening now is on the backs of slavery. It's on the backs of lynching. It's on the backs of Jim Crow era. A lot of what we see in our world today is on the backs of the disregard of Black life. That now, when you hear something like housing discrimination, it's like, oh, did that actually really exist? Or when you hear of discrimination in the workplace. I was just talking to one of my friends just day before yesterday, and she was talking about how she experiences discrimination at her job all the time. She's the only Black, and she experiences all the time. What will happen is when she says that, it'll kind of like, yeah, okay, yeah, whatever. But still, it's that, yeah, okay, yeah, sure, type thing. That when she was telling me what was happening, I was like, oh yeah, because I've experienced that too. The little one.
Oh yeah.
Hold on.
Do what you gotta do.
Let me get him out the way.
Okay.
Say hi to Tim.
No, you did that.
Hey man, good to see you.
You got him.
Oh, that's great.
And it's just so much stuff that even happens even today that I think people, when it comes to like how many unarmed African American men or women have been killed, how many people are in the prison systems, that are African American, and then how many are falsely accused, how many are in there for crimes that whites have gotten way less sentences than African Americans. If you just talk about the criminal justice system, it's just ridiculous. If you look at the sentencing, how African Americans can have the same sentence but be so much more, they will get the higher sentence. They do the same crime but get the higher sentence. Yeah. You can even in terms of it's so many things. How many people have they might know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody and can kind of get stuff off, but it will be different for the African American. So yeah, it exists. You can't say, even though you don't see lynchings, you see that in our society.
Well, and I I'd always heard that, and I don't think I ever really felt it or I understood. I didn't understand, like, how can it be that way until, as pastors, sometimes somebody in our congregation will end up in legal trouble, and, we'll find ourselves in the gallery of a courtroom or testifying or something. I remember one case in particular where I was going to court a lot, and you never know when that case is going to be called. So there'd be times where I'd be sitting in the gallery for 4 or 5 hours before my congregant's case got called. And it was amazing to me. I mean, you'd have somebody who was Black or brown, didn't seem to have means, and their public defender is rifling through stacks of paper just trying to find the one with their name. Like, they don't know their client's name. And then, somebody else who does have means, and it wasn't exclusively those who are white, but it was more than not, it was those who are white. Their attorney comes in, and I remember with one, I won't say the name, but one person that I was connected to had a very high profile attorney that you see regularly on television and whatnot. They come in $1,000 shoes, and the legal experience was night and day.
Exactly.
It was absolutely shocking for me.
Absolutely. The guy who but he killed like 3 people by drunk driving, I think he had, the guy who got off with affluenza. I was like, what?
Right.
What is, and so many people in the African American community, they will say, and it will be on different things. It could be anything from a sentencing. It could be anything from the way a cop is talking to people. It could be anything from being in the store. It could be how how maybe somebody at the bank came to you, and the phrase was, yeah, well, if they was Black, if they was Black, then it wouldn't be like that. If they was Black, well, it wouldn't end like that. There is no, you know, oh, talking, there's no talking. All of a sudden guns come out, you know, oh, there is no, you know, well, let's get your reference. It's just no, it's a no for you. You know, there is no, you know, well, let me, you know, let me look at your background. It's just a no, 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 no for you. And you hate that, but you see it. And you have not only will you have a racial issue, but you also could have a class issue, because if you do have money, and you're African American, there are things that you can still kind of do, but even still, there's issues there. But yeah, that's just, it's like in our culture. When I hear about systemic racism, I'm like, man, the systems that we have that are impacted by racism, from, you know, the criminal justice system to the educational system to, you know, the healthcare system, all of those systems are impacted by racial injustice. And so, you know, when it comes to really making a difference, you really have to look at how the system really is biased and what things are there, because many people will say, oh, it's just because they don't have enough this, or they don't do this enough, or they don't do that enough. But you don't look at things that are in place that do not help the African American, that may help others, or that hinder, and the African American that does not hinder others. And so, you know, there are things that when you grow up as an African American, you understand those things, and you know, you just figure out ways to get around it. You know how to live it. And then when you come to know Jesus, you know how oftentimes you might wonder why spirituality is so important to African Americans. It's because we got to know that, you know, the Lord is going to keep us, and God is going to take care of us, even in the midst of the world where we may feel like a stranger. You know, the Lord is going to keep us. You know, even if you know, because you can go to a store and it doesn't matter if you're a woman or a man. If you're in a different, you know, the eyebrows are going up. Doesn't matter. Me and my brother, one time, this is way back I was during my Fuller days. And me and my brother, we went to Rodeo Drive, and we were just going around looking at places. But you know, we go in places, people were like following us. So we decided to go in this one place, and I said, we were joking. I said, you go right, I go left. We'll see what they gonna do.
Right.
Sure enough,
how well staffed are they?
Yeah, we'll see what y'all gonna do. We walk in there, he goes right, I go left, right? They're like, you know, okay. Ooh, I follow first, you know. You always, you know, it's like always, you automatically think it's me, but it's not. I mean, but you understand that, and you know, you can feel it sometimes. There are some places you go and you can feel it. And you're like, nah, I'm not gonna go in here. And there are, you know, when I was in college, I remember, you know, driving, and there was just things. My car stopped. I would drive from Austin to Dallas, and there's only one highway, you know, to go from Austin to Dallas. And people know, you know, if your car stopped, listen, there are certain places you don't need to be up in Texas. You just don't need to be there, and you be African American. Your car stopped. It's just not a good thing. It's just not good. And our car stopped, and I was like, oh Lord, we are in such and such. And you know, and this is, like I said, this is in the 90s. So you're good to drive down 35. And at that time, I could look over to the right and see some crosses. I mean, you know, I'm just saying, that's what I could see that every now and then. It wouldn't be all the time, but I do remember seeing one or two or three. But I remember my car stopped, and I was like, oh my gosh, we are not in a good place. But God kept us, and we made it home. So the Lord was gracious and connected us with some right people, some right people. But there's been countless of issues. There's been countless of times when it comes up in African American, being African American in this country. So yeah, countless of times of just Yeah.
And one of the things, Camille, that I'm really struck by is, you know, from when you were talking about college and even before then, kind of up to the present, like you keep using this phrase, like, oh, you just know. You just, when you're black, you just know.
Yeah.
There's only 3 slots on the cheer squad. You just know. And I guess I'm really struck by that, because I think, for me, and I think probably for a lot of other folks who are white and people of color who aren't black, like we don't know, we don't know that thing. And that your situation kind of develops that kind of awareness in you, where you just know you don't go there or you do go there. Like that's just really striking, I guess, for me to hear.
Yeah, when you aren't affected by it, then you probably wouldn't know. When you aren't affected by it. I have a friend.
But you don't have the luxury of not knowing. If you're black, you know.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
It's like the talk that you need to have with your sons or in your daughters, or just the talk that we have in our churches, predominantly African American churches, about how to conversate with the police, what you need to do, what you don't need to do, that kind of things. There are just things that, yeah, you know. Yeah. I remember being at a covenant event, and I had been, and let me see if this has happened to you. This is what I'm talking. This is one of those things that I'm talking. You're white, so let me see if this happened to you. I was in the covenant for this had to be about 10 years ago. So by that time, I was in the covenant for about eight years or so. So, and this is a well-meaning. It's just not a bad thing. It's well-meaning, but just to let you know that it's different. So I go to a midwinter, annual meeting. I was at one of the things, and so a nice little white lady came to me, and she said, "We're so glad you're here, and we're so glad you joined us." Now, the first time you might say, "Oh, that's nice that she said that," but here's my question: I've been here 8 years. How long you been here? How come I'm not telling you? I'm so glad you joined us. But how come you had to come tell me? You so glad I joined you. You joined us. I'm so glad you joined us. But I've been here. So it's always that. It's like, how come I've been here? How come I'm still a visitor? Or I'm still a them. Yeah. I'm not a you.
Yeah, right. Who's this us you're talking about? And don't you know I'm already part of the us?
Right. And if I was white, would I get the us? Would I get that? Would you come to me and say, "I'm so glad that you joined us"? I mean, would I get that? Or did you say that?
I haven't gotten that. No, although I will say this, Camille, I don't think I've said that exact thing, but I've been the white person saying the stupid thing more times than I'm sure I'm aware of.
And you understand that too. I mean, again, when you're African American, you get that too, and you know it. I'm not. You don't get mad at folks. You know that people are just. They are, they're just who they are. My friend, I have a friend, like the same friend who was in the. I'm going to go back to high school. The same friend who was in the drill team, and again, she was like one of the captains, and so. One of her fellow captains has she was white, but she had really curly hair. And so she had this Afro pick in her hair. So she told my friend who's African American, "I need you to pass me my in pick. And my friend was like, "What?" Now understand. She didn't mean anything by it.
Sure.
That's just the way she was raised.
Yeah.
So as an African American, when you hear like stuff that may be insensitive or whatever, it's like, that that's the way people were raised, but you don't want to leave them there. So you do want to challenge, but you have to watch, because you don't know the different stories of different people. Some people may be very offended and very angry and just be tired of it and ready to just go off on people. Other African Americans might be more, okay, let's have a conversation. There are those who are like, I'm tired of talking. I'm not trying to talk. I ain't talking nobody else. And there are those who they are, their world is around Caucasians or other races, and that's the dialogue that they continually have. And so it's just different ways, but all of them, whether you have African Americans in a predominantly white area or predominantly African American area, all of us would have that sense of knowing this person said the wrong thing, or this person said the wrong thing, and that's just the way they were raised. Let's just help them out. Or this person has that mentality of it. You can tell the difference. You know the difference, and so. But there's no excuse. You don't want to leave that there. You always want to, in some way, try and encourage people or confront. You just do. You want to confront. I used to be part of Young Life, and I remember I was a part. We were in some Young Life, going to some Young Life camp as leaders. I was a leader, and whatever city we were in, the lady who was doing the tour guide, she was telling everybody. I was the only African American in the car, and in the van rather, and we were going. And so she was telling everybody, "Oh, this is this is that. What's going on?" So then she says, "Oh, this is the bad part of town." So I said, "What makes it the bad part of town?" To which she was like, yeah, she caught it. She caught it. Because she wouldn't have caught it before. But I wasn't mad, but I wanted to help you understand that just because it doesn't make it the bad part of town. That's not nothing to say to people, right? Or it's nothing even to think. Anyway, so it's just, so I have, you just want to help, you just got to, because there's thinking, there's thoughts, there's processes that you just are used to thinking that you don't realize that it's different for other races and other cultures, especially in particular African Americans. So yeah.
Well, and Camille, let me ask you this. I don't want to keep you too much longer.
That's fine.
You've got family running around there, but we've got a church of folks listening in on our conversation here who are broken, seeing what's going on, and particularly these stories recently of George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and others, and you and Chris Cooper and Central Park, and for people who aren't Black, who are wanting to grow in their capacity to be in solidarity with our brothers and sisters who are Black. Do you have any words of counsel, any words of wisdom that you'd want to give to us?
I would say I have a cousin. I had a cousin. He was 26, and he was gunned down by the police. Him and one police officer. And he didn't have a gun. And it was the police officer's word, because my cousin passed away. And the police officer's word, he got off. We all believe that, well, from what we see and what we know, it was a situation. It was way back in 2000. So if had it been now, it would have been more prominent. But again, like I said, this has always been happening. I would say, listen. I would say listen to stories. I would say, I know people who have just a great heart and they want to help. I would say rent some movies. And sometimes movies are really hard to watch. They're really hard. They're really hard to watch. I remember seeing Mississippi Burning. If you ever, that was back again in the
Yep.
80s. I remember seeing
Mhm.
Mississippi Burning, and I saw Mississippi Burning in a predominantly white was an area. We went to this area that's predominantly white, so we were the only blacks in the movie theater. And I remember watching the movie, and after the movie, I got up like this, looking at everybody in the movie theater.
Right.
Like, was that your
Yeah.
ancestor?
Mhm. Mhm.
Movies can be hard, but you know what? Movies tell a truth that you have to just wrestle with. And in the space of understanding the plight of the African American, oftentimes it's just a matter of feeling that and getting to a place where you empathize. Um, Things need to change. There needs to be reform, and whatever area that you can help out to reform, I would say lend a help in that area. I don't know whatever areas people can do. I mean, there are certain people who can reform in the police police department area, or the criminal justice, or the healthcare system, whatever system that you can help to reform. I would say try to figure out, pray and see how can I help to reform in that area.
Mhm.
How can I partner maybe with an African American church to help? What is it that I can do? You might not be able to know the totality of what it is like to be African American, but you do know what it's like if you're Caucasian. You do know what it's like to be Caucasian and maybe see injustice, and you see it. And you might feel helpless, but you're not helpless. There are certain, you can do something. It might not be that particular things, but there are ways you can, like I said, you can help out in just so many different ways. Whether it be, helping out with maybe the foster care system, or there's so many systems that are just biased, they're just lopsided in impacting the African American community, that it's not so with white communities. So I would say get educated. This is the time to get educated. Just Mercy right now. There's a movie called Just Mercy, and it is free. Watch it.
Yep.
Watch it. And the emotions will come, and emotions will be like that. That's okay. But emotions can't lead you. Pray and see, Lord, how would you have me to be used in justice issues? What way? How can I be used? And let the Lord guide. God will guide. He will guide, and He will direct in ways that you can help in justice issues. I mean, I think about the story of Moses. Moses was out there and he's trying to help his people, but the first time he tries to help his people, he goes out there, on his own, and
Right.
trying to help, and then he messes stuff up because he's trying to do it on his own.
Right.
Let
Right.
the Lord lead you and guide you.
Mhm.
And Moses is called to be the great deliverer of his people, but on God's terms. And so
Right.
allow the Lord to lead you, because He will, but you just have to be available and open and ready to be used by God. So that's what I would say.
That's thank you. That's a great word, and yeah, and I receive that. I feel that, and I, just to circle back to a second for something you said earlier too, that I think maybe fits in this category also of things that those of us who want to be in solidarity can do. And I think that's not to be dismissive of the past, whether that's distant past or recent past, because what I'm hearing from you, and I've heard from other friends too, is maybe it feels distant to you because you're white, but it doesn't feel distant to me because I'm black. And and I see that more and more. I mean, to talk about lynching, and then you look at, say, Ahmaud Arbery, and it's like, okay, what is that but a lynching?
Exactly.
A couple of, vigilante justice sort of,
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't need to tell you, but
I would say, the more you're I'm sorry, I'm putting my I see that my battery is going low. Okay. The more you read, or the more you see stories, or the more you get educated in the African American life, the more you'll see. The more you'll see.
Yeah.
The more you'll see. Get you some. My husband always teases me, but Jet magazine is like Black History, and it has Black History. I saw this. I mean, I wish I had it with me, but there is this photograph that I saw just last night with my Bible study. I showed this photograph of 10,000 African Americans marching in New York City on Fifth Street in 1917, and they were marching in protest to the St. Louis riots of 1917, marching against racial injustice. In 1917, 10,000, and they were all dressed in white with hats on. It was just like amazing. It was just like, wow, that back then, 10,000 African Americans silently marching against racial injustice. And here we are doing the same thing. We can't just say that was just then and it's happening, still happening.
Sure. Well, and it puts the frustration into perspective too, when it's like, hey, 100 years later, doing the same march, You march. That really tears me. I mean, it got me, and I would say this. I would also say this. That's on my heart. There are a lot of resources, I would say, that white America has that they're probably used to having, that they could share with African Americans or help people learn. I mean, there's different things like, that are resources that you might want to think of, resources that you have that could help somebody else. There's so many kids in the inner city now. When you look at the educational system, they don't have books they don't have the books that kids in other areas have. They don't have the computers or whatever. And I remember it was a couple of years ago, Steve Harvey did this whole thing where he bought a whole bunch of books for kids in the inner city. So many things that people just don't have. And you would be amazed and dumbfounded that these kids just don't have this, when it's like second nature in the schools that are around you, but they don't have those things. And like I said, that's just one area I could think of when it comes to education. I mean, you can go on, prison systems, but there are so many resources that you have that you probably could say, you know what, let me share this resource, or let me see how I can help in this area. That's a good word.
Yeah.
Well, Camille, I thank you so much. You're such a gift. I just really appreciate you, and I have so much respect for you. And I'm so glad that that we're colleagues in the same denomination and everything too. And if it seems appropriate, please tell your church. They've got some brothers and sisters 45 minutes to the south that love them and are thinking about them, and just really want the best for them.
Oh, that's great. We ought to get together sometime or something, do something. I don't, well, now it's coronavirus. I don't know when we can do anything.
Hey, well, when we can, we'd be all in. We would love that.
That would be great.
We'd love that.
Yeah.
Right on. Well, hey, thank you again for taking the time, and tell Barry I said hi, and
I will.
Thank you for wrangling the kids while you could do this, and we'll see you around the covenant.
Thank you so much for just, there are people, I have been so warmed, just my heart has been so warmed by just the outpour of affection from other races, and I've just been that's been so refreshing for me, just to see it. I've seen it. I've seen just the races period just come together. There was a picture, again, I'm into pictures, but there's a picture I saw on Facebook, and there was this Caucasian police officer was trying to help the neighborhood, and he got stuck by himself. with these angry protesters, and they wanted to come at him. So this picture of these 4 Black men that linked arms with masks on to make sure these protesters did not get to him. That was warming to me. And then also just seeing so many people from the other cultures and races just come, and I've just been refreshed. So thank you so much for calling me. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, I mean, praise God. That's who we want to be for each other, linking arms and protecting each other.
Amen. So. Amen. Thank you.
All right, Camille.
Hello,
you take care.
All right.
Thanks. All right. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Sorry to disturb, Mom, but